Every woman may meet countless men in her lifetime, but only once will she meet the kind who makes her heart hesitate, not because he begs to stay, but because she fears to lose him. He is calm where others are loud, distant where others chase, and unshaken where others crumble. You can feel it, that quiet confidence, that rare self-control that makes her realize letting go of him would be her greatest mistake. But what makes a man reach that level of power? What turns silence into strength and presence into something unforgettable? Stay with me. Because in this world of noise and neediness, few men understand what truly makes a woman fear losing them. This is Stoic silence, where we study the power of calm, the psychology of detachment, and the art of becoming the man no one forgets. If this message resonates with you, like this video, subscribe to Stoic Silence and drop a 1 if you've ever felt unseen but stayed silent, or a 2 if you're ready to reclaim your power. Let's start this journey now and uncover the one thing that separates the replaceable from the unforgettable. Our emotional stability, the calm in the storm. She doesn't fear the man who argues, shouts, or tries to win every battle with words. She fears the one who doesn't flinch when she tests him. The man who stands still in the middle of emotional chaos. The one who doesn't need to prove his strength because his composure already says everything. You can feel it when he enters a room. His energy doesn't rise to match the noise. Instead, the noise fades to match his calm. In a world addicted to reaction, where people explode at the smallest spark, he is the rare one who breathes before he speaks. While others rush to defend their pride, he protects his peace. He doesn't allow chaos to own his emotions. He controls the temperature of every room he walks into. When tension rises, he lowers his voice. When provoked, he smiles, not out of indifference, but because he understands something most people never learn. Losing control means losing power, and he refuses to hand that power to anyone. His calm is not coldness, it is mastery. It is the quiet confidence of a man who has faced storms before and learned that the only thing worth controlling is himself. He knows anger is easy, restraint is rare. Any man can raise his voice, but it takes a stronger man to hold his silence when everything inside him wants to explode. That silence is his weapon. It unsettles those who seek to provoke him because they cannot predict him. They expect a reaction, but instead they meet a mirror, one that reflects back their own chaos while he remains untouched. He doesn't run from emotion, he channels it. He can feel anger, sadness, disappointment, but instead of letting them rule him, he transforms them into purpose. Every challenge becomes training. Every test becomes proof of who he's becoming. And the more life throws at him, the more grounded he becomes. That kind of steadiness is magnetic. It draws respect from men and admiration from women, because everyone secretly longs for the energy of someone who cannot be moved by noise. He knows that in relationships, emotional stability isn't about suppressing what you feel. It's about knowing when to express and when to observe. He doesn't rush to defend himself in arguments because he values understanding over being right. When she raises her voice, he listens. When she tries to spark chaos, he remains centered. It's not because he doesn't care, it's because he knows reacting from emotion always leads to regret. His restraint is not distance, it's wisdom. He's learned that peace, once lost, is the hardest thing to rebuild. He has seen what happens when a man lets his emotions lead him, words said in anger that can't be taken back, decisions made from ego that destroy what patience could have fixed. That's why he no longer trades peace for temporary control. His calmness is not born from weakness. It's forged in the fire of every mistake that once cost him clarity. Now he carries that calm like armor. It doesn't mean life doesn't hurt him, It means pain no longer defines him. And women, even if they never say it out loud, recognize the difference. They feel the safety in his energy, the trust in his tone, the quiet certainty in the way he handles pressure. Because when things fall apart, he doesn't. While others drown in emotion, he becomes the anchor that keeps everything from drifting too far. That steadiness is what she fears losing. Not just the man, but the sense of balance he brings. It's not his words that she remembers. It's how peaceful she felt standing next to him. He doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard. His silence carries weight. His reactions, or lack of them, teach others how to treat him. That kind of emotional control makes people slow down around him, choose their words more carefully, and show up with more respect. Because they know this man doesn't entertain chaos. He outgrows it, and in a world full of impulsive men, that makes him different. It makes him valuable. When you master your emotions, you master your world. You stop being pulled by every wave and start steering your own ship. You stop chasing validation and start commanding respect without saying a word. That is what makes him unforgettable, the quiet power of self-control in a world where everyone else is losing theirs. And so when she looks at him, she doesn't just see a man. She sees peace. She sees the calm she wishes she could feel. And deep down she knows, if she ever loses him, she's not just losing a person. She's losing the mirror that showed her what stability looks like. Because peace once felt cannot be replaced. It lingers in memory long after the man is gone. In the end, he teaches through his presence. His silence becomes a lesson in strength. His calm becomes a reflection of discipline, and his restraint becomes a language that only those who value peace can understand. When you master your emotions, you master the connection, because peace will always outlast panic, and calm will always outshine chaos. That's why she fears losing him, not because he dominates her, but because he reminds her of something rare, that true power is never loud. It's quiet, it's steady, it's self-controlled. And once a woman has felt that kind of strength, every other kind feels small. And that's where the shift happens, because from that kind of calm, everything else begins. Second purpose, the man with a mission. A woman never truly falls for a man, she falls for his direction. She is drawn not to his charm, his status, or his words, but to the steady force behind his actions. She fears losing the man who doesn't just exist, but moves, with clarity, with conviction, with an unwavering sense of purpose. Because deep down, she knows a man like that can walk alone, and he will never stop moving forward just to be understood. He doesn't wake up waiting for life to hand him meaning. He wakes up knowing that purpose isn't found. It's built piece by piece, through struggle, discipline, and faith in something greater than comfort. While others search for motivation, he relies on momentum. He moves with quiet determination, guided by an inner compass no one else can touch. There's no noise in his drive, no need to announce his vision. It's written in the way he lives. His focus isn't desperate, it's deliberate. He doesn't chase people, he builds things that outlast them. Purpose gives him gravity. It gives weight to his silence, authority to his words, and depth to his presence. In a world where most men drift between distractions, he's anchored in mission. His goals are not reactions to circumstance. They are reflections of who he has chosen to become. You can sense it in how he carries himself, calm but firm, humble yet unshakably sure. That kind of focus makes people adjust their pace when he enters the room. It commands respect without demand. And women, whether they realize it or not, are drawn to that gravitational pull. Because purpose creates safety. It's not the money or the success, it's the predictability of direction. She feels at peace knowing he won't crumble when life tests him. She sees that his focus is not easily disrupted by emotion, that his vision is bigger than any argument, any distraction, any fleeting temptation. He is building something that matters, and that makes him rare. But purpose isn't comfort, it's responsibility, it's sacrifice, it's the weight of knowing that no one is coming to save you. A man with purpose doesn't get lost in the noise of validation because his path is already chosen. He understands that true fulfillment doesn't come from pleasure, but from progress. That's why he doesn't waste his time explaining his dreams to those who can't see what he sees. He's too busy turning what's invisible into something real. When she looks at him, she feels both admiration and unease. Admiration because his ambition inspires her. Unease because she knows she cannot control him. He's not waiting for permission, not waiting to be understood. He's already in motion, and that terrifies her, not because he might leave, but because he doesn't need her to stay. His direction is his home, and no relationship, no rejection, no failure can take that away. He doesn't move recklessly. His discipline gives his mission structure. He doesn't chase everything that shines. He builds what endures. He is patient when others rush, focused when others doubt, silent when others seek attention. And in that silence, his purpose speaks. People follow him not because he demands loyalty, but because he embodies consistency. His vision is not loud, it's contagious. Those around him start wanting more from themselves, not because he told them to, but because he reminded them what focus looks like. While most men collapse under uncertainty, the man with a mission thrives in it. He welcomes the unknown because he trusts his direction. He knows storms don't destroy those who are anchored, they reveal them. Every setback, every delay, every rejection becomes fuel. He doesn't need everything to make sense. He just needs to keep moving. That's why he's unstoppable. That's why he's free. And she senses that freedom. The quiet, self-contained independence that says, "I'm already whole." It's not arrogance, it's assurance. He's not trying to fill a void through love or recognition. He's creating from fullness. And when a man lives like that, his presence becomes powerful in ways words can't describe. Because purpose gives him something that cannot be taken away, peace in motion. If she walks away, he won't chase. He'll simply adjust his stride, keep his focus, and continue down his path. Not out of pride, but out of principle. Because the man who walks with purpose doesn't stop for confusion. He doesn't pause his life for validation. He keeps building, he keeps becoming, and in doing so, he leaves an imprint that time cannot erase. That's why she fears losing him. Not because she'll never find another man, but because she knows she'll never find that same direction again. That same steady rhythm that made her feel secure and alive at once. She knows his journey will continue, with or without her, and that realization cuts deeper than any goodbye. Purpose makes a man untouchable. It makes his love valuable because it's rooted in strength, not need. It makes his silence powerful because it's guided, not empty. And it makes his presence unforgettable because it reminds everyone around him of what they could be if they stopped drifting and started moving with intention. Nothing terrifies the world more than a man who doesn't need it, because a man like that cannot be controlled, cannot be replaced, and cannot be forgotten. He becomes the calm inside his own storm, and the world bends quietly around the direction of his will. Third, unshakable confidence. Silent power. Confidence doesn't shout, it whispers. Its silence carries a weight that no amount of noise can imitate. It doesn't try to convince, it doesn't demand attention, it simply is. And when it enters the room, you feel it before you see it. Because real confidence is not about being louder than others. It's about being grounded within yourself. The man who embodies this kind of confidence doesn't chase validation. He creates value. He doesn't compete to prove his worth. He becomes someone who doesn't need to. He doesn't seek applause or approval. He doesn't explain himself to those committed to misunderstanding him. He knows who he is, and that knowledge makes him unshakable. Criticism can't wound him because his self-worth isn't tied to outside voices. Approval can't inflate him because he's already full. His confidence isn't built on external praise. It's forged in quiet, private battles that no one else sees. The failures he's overcome, the storms he's survived, the nights he's rebuilt himself from nothing, those are the moments that taught him who he is. And once a man truly knows himself, the world loses its power to define him. This is the man who no longer performs for the crowd. He doesn't need to prove his success through noise, possessions, or constant exposure. While others post, he produces. While others talk, he moves. His results become his voice. His peace becomes his presence. He's the kind of man who steadies the room without saying a word. People trust his silence because it speaks of strength, of a man who's been tested and still stands centered. Women sense that steadiness immediately. It disarms them because it's rare. She can't manipulate what she can't move. She can't define a man who already knows who he is. And when she realizes that her approval no longer determines his peace, fear begins to surface. Not fear of him, but fear of losing someone who doesn't need her to feel whole. It's the quiet independence that draws her in and keeps her restless, because she knows a man like that can walk away at any moment, not in anger, but in peace. Unshakable confidence isn't about perfection, it's about presence. It's the ability to walk through rejection without losing faith, to face uncertainty without losing direction. It's that calm certainty that says, "I'll be fine, no matter what happens." It's the kind of strength that doesn't need to dominate others. It simply doesn't break. He can listen without feeling small. He can admit mistakes without feeling weak. And he can celebrate others without feeling threatened. That's what separates him from the masses. His confidence isn't a mask, it's mastery. You can tell when a man has reached this level. There's a stillness in his energy, a depth in his gaze, a quiet that feels like power. He doesn't rush to fill silence because he's at peace with it. He doesn't measure his worth by comparison because he's too busy becoming his own standard. People may not understand him, but they respect him because he carries himself with a certainty that can't be taught. It can only be earned. And when life tests him, he doesn't crumble. He adapts. He doesn't seek someone to rescue him. He trusts himself to rebuild. That kind of inner confidence can't be taken away because it doesn't depend on circumstances. It's born from self-acceptance. He has learned to be his own foundation, and that makes him immovable. True confidence is not arrogance, it's peace disguised as certainty. It's knowing that validation is fleeting but authenticity is eternal. It's choosing silence over proving, purpose over performance, and calm over control. And once a man reaches that place of quiet power, nothing external can disturb what he has built inside. Because real confidence doesn't need to announce itself. It simply walks in and everything else adjusts. 4. Leadership and strength. Guidance, not control. When the world begins to collapse, most men look for someone to follow. But the man she fears losing becomes the one others instinctively turn to. He doesn't rise because he demands authority. He rises because his steadiness commands it. In chaos, he doesn't shout orders, he restores direction. In confusion, he doesn't add noise, he brings clarity. His leadership doesn't come from ego, but from calm certainty. the kind that gives people a sense of ground when the world feels like it's shifting beneath them. He leads not through dominance but through direction. He understands that leadership isn't about controlling others, it's about mastering himself. His strength isn't found in forcing outcomes or bending people to his will. It's found in remaining centered when pressure is high and emotions are unstable. While others panic, he plans. While others argue, he listens. He creates clarity in confusion because he doesn't let fear lead him. His power comes not from resistance, but from understanding, the ability to see 10 steps ahead while everyone else is blinded by the moment. He protects, but never possesses. He knows that real strength doesn't confine, it liberates. He gives those around him the freedom to grow, to fail, and to rise again, because he understands that guidance means building, not binding. He doesn't need to control to feel secure. His security comes from knowing he can adapt to anything. That kind of confidence creates safety without suppression. She feels that. She feels his calm in the way he holds himself, in the way he moves through conflict with composure. He is not there to dominate her. He is there to steady her, to remind her what balance feels like when the world is shaking. He listens deeply, but never yields his principles. His empathy doesn't make him weak, it makes him wise. He can see another person's pain without absorbing it, understand emotion without being ruled by it. When he speaks, he doesn't try to impress. He speaks to align, to guide, to restore order. People follow him not because they have to, but because they trust him. They trust that when he decides, it's not impulsive. It's measured, thoughtful, grounded. His courage isn't loud, it's steady. It doesn't appear in big declarations. It shows up in quiet consistency, in showing up every day, even when no one's watching. He doesn't just hold her, he holds space for her to grow. That's what separates him from men who confuse control with leadership. He doesn't demand loyalty, he earns it. He doesn't ask for submission, he inspires it through his stability. He allows others to evolve around him without fear, because his foundation is strong enough to withstand change. She feels that security, the assurance that she can be herself, make mistakes, and still be met with calm understanding instead of chaos. That kind of strength is rare. It's not the kind that seeks to overpower, it's the kind that empowers. A strong man doesn't need to prove he's strong. He shows it in his silence, in his discipline, in his ability to make decisions when others freeze. He carries his burden quietly, knowing that panic spreads faster than calm. His presence becomes a form of leadership, even when he doesn't speak, because his energy reassures others that everything will be handled. That is what makes him unforgettable, not his dominance, but his dependability. It's the kind of stability that cannot be faked because it comes from self-mastery, not performance. Real leadership is not about control. It's about creating calm where others find chaos. It's the ability to guide without gripping, to stand firm without standing in the way. The man who leads through calm strength doesn't force others to rise. He becomes the example that makes them want to. That's why she fears losing him, because when everything else feels uncertain, his strength is the one constant. And once you've known that kind of presence, the kind that steadies storms instead of creating them, you realize that losing him means losing the calm you didn't know you depended on. True leadership isn't about control, it's about becoming the calm others rise within, and once you've felt that kind of strength, no other presence feels the same. V. Respect and boundaries. The man who values himself. Respect begins where desperation ends. Nothing shakes a woman more than a man who can walk away, with peace in his eyes and purpose in his step, because that's the moment she realizes he was never chasing her approval. He was protecting his dignity. The man who values himself understands that respect is not something you demand, it's something you embody. He doesn't beg to be valued. He becomes valuable by knowing his worth and refusing to let anyone, even love, make him forget it. He doesn't argue for respect. He enforces it through action. He doesn't need to raise his voice, threaten to leave, or prove his point. His standards speak for him. He's kind but not compliant, loving but not blind. He knows that love without boundaries becomes dependency, and dependency is just a slower form of destruction. A man who respects himself gives deeply, but never endlessly. He knows where his energy begins and where it must stop. He understands that giving without limit doesn't create closeness. It breeds entitlement. He never sacrifices his principles for temporary peace. He knows that comfort earned by self-betrayal always turns into resentment. So he doesn't tolerate disrespect disguised as passion. He doesn't excuse manipulation just because it's dressed as love. His silence in conflict isn't weakness, it's discipline. He stays calm not because he doesn't care, but because he refuses to lower his standards for the sake of keeping someone else comfortable. That restraint confuses those who live on reaction because they expect a fight, but all they find is a man who refuses to lose himself to chaos. Without self-respect, love becomes survival. It turns into chasing instead of connecting, into proving instead of being. But the man who values himself builds love from strength, not fear. He doesn't need to win every argument. He only needs to protect his peace. He doesn't cling when things get uncertain. He allows distance to reveal truth. Because a man who knows his worth never fears loss, he understands that anything built on disrespect isn't worth keeping. And when she realizes that his patience has limits, everything changes. The moment she understands that his forgiveness is not endless, that his silence is not submission, that his presence is a privilege, not a guarantee, fear quietly replaces comfort. Because she knows that once he's gone, he won't return to prove a point. He'll leave without anger, without bitterness, without the need to be understood. And that kind of departure leaves an echo that lingers far longer than any goodbye. The man who values himself doesn't use boundaries to control others. He uses them to protect his peace. Boundaries aren't walls, they're gates. They don't keep love out, they keep chaos from creeping in. They define who you are, what you tolerate, and what you refuse to accept. They are the invisible lines that tell the world, this is where my self-respect lives. And when a man draws those lines with clarity and calm, people respond differently. They may test him, but they never forget him. Because strength that doesn't need to shout is the kind that commands quiet respect. He can love deeply and still walk away. He can forgive, but never forget what crossed the line. He can listen with empathy, but never lose sight of truth. That balance between compassion and conviction is what makes him rare. It's what makes her fear losing him, because she knows she'll never find that mix of tenderness and authority again. She knows he's not controlled by emotion, he's guided by principle, and that makes him irreplaceable. In a world where so many men trade their peace for acceptance, he stands apart. He'd rather be misunderstood than lose himself trying to be understood. He'd rather walk alone in truth than stay where respect no longer lives. Because he knows that self-worth doesn't come from who stays. It comes from what you refuse to allow. Respect and boundaries are not barriers to love. They are the foundation that makes love possible. They teach others how to treat you. They remind the world and yourself that your peace is not negotiable. And when a man finally learns to honor those edges, he doesn't just earn respect, he becomes it. Boundaries aren't walls, they are the edges that define a man's peace. And the man who honors them is the one the world never forgets, because his silence carries the authority of someone who no longer needs to be understood to be respected. 6. Scarcity. The rarity of value. The rarest men are never loud, they're simply less available. That's what makes them unforgettable. Their absence speaks louder than most people's presence. In a world where everyone is constantly seeking attention, they choose to stay still. They understand something that most never will. The less you give away, the more people value what remains. Scarcity isn't about pretending to be busy or hard to reach. It's about protecting the most precious resource a man has, his energy. He doesn't make himself easy to access, not because he's arrogant, but because he's intentional. He knows that every interaction either feeds his peace or drains it. So he invests his time like gold, only where it multiplies his clarity, his growth, his sense of purpose. He doesn't say yes to every invitation, doesn't respond to every message, doesn't chase every opportunity. Not because he's dismissive, but because he understands that the man who tries to be everywhere ends up being nowhere. His selectiveness isn't distance, it's discipline. He doesn't chase attention because he doesn't need to. His silence already draws it. When everyone else shouts to be seen, his calm becomes magnetic. When others overshare to feel validated, his mystery becomes the attraction. He knows that true presence doesn't come from constant access. It comes from meaningful impact. People remember not how often he was there, but how deeply they felt him when he was. And that's what separates him from the rest. In a world where everyone overextends themselves just to be noticed, he withholds. And that restraint makes every moment with him feel rare. Every conversation feels heavier, every look more meaningful. Because he doesn't give his attention easily, it carries weight when he does. People feel it, and women especially sense that kind of focus. They recognize the difference between a man who's available to everyone and a man who gives his energy like it's sacred. The first is replaceable, the second is not. Scarcity creates value. It always has. The less you are seen, the more you are sought. The less you speak, the more your words matter. The less you give away, the more people realize what your presence truly meant. That's why the man who knows his worth doesn't try to be everywhere, because presence only matters when it's rare. He knows that mystery breeds respect, that silence multiplies impact, and that absence, when rooted in purpose, speaks louder than constant availability ever could. He doesn't disappear to punish, he disappears to preserve, to return to himself, to refill his strength, rebuild his vision, and refine his focus. And that's why losing him feels permanent, because once a man learns to value his energy, he never wastes it again. He no longer gives himself freely to those who take him for granted. He no longer chases what disturbs his peace. He knows that what is easily accessed is rarely appreciated. The rarest men are not the ones who vanish. They are the ones who know when to stay silent, when to walk away, and when to return stronger. And that's why their absence leaves a mark. Because when a man understands the power of scarcity, his very existence becomes a reminder of how valuable presence can be. What you've heard isn't fantasy. It's the framework of a man who cannot be shaken. Emotional stability, purpose, confidence, strength, respect, and scarcity aren't traits to collect. They're disciplines to live by. They form the foundation of a man who no longer reacts to life, but directs it. Power begins where desperation ends. When you stop chasing validation, the world adjusts to your silence. When you stop needing to be understood, you finally understand yourself. That's when peace replaces chaos. A calm man isn't cold, he's focused. A man with purpose doesn't drift, he builds. Confidence doesn't shout, it stands still. Leadership isn't control, it's composure. Respect isn't demanded, it's embodied. And scarcity isn't distance, it's discipline. Every challenge you face is a test of control. Every conflict is a chance to choose peace over ego. Because the man who masters himself becomes the one no one can shake, replace, or forget. In the end, peace isn't found, it's built. And once you build it, you become what the world rarely sees anymore. A man of quiet power, grounded purpose, and unshakable worth. Like this video, subscribe to Stoic Silence and drop your thoughts or experiences below. Tell me which part hit home for you, because every story you share becomes part of this brotherhood of men choosing peace over chaos and strength over reaction. Your journey doesn't end here, it begins with awareness. Stay silent when the world screams for your reaction. Stay focused when distractions call your name. And stay true to yourself, because in the end, that's where real power lives.